The gun pressed against her temple was cold. So was Victor Kane's voice. "Give me one reason," he said, "why I shouldn't paint these walls with your boss's debts." Lena Hayes couldn't run. Her damaged leg had made sure of that years ago, but as the restaurant erupted into chaos, chairs crashing, people screaming, her young coworker frozen in the crosshairs, she did the only thing her broken body would allow. She threw herself forward and collapsed at the feet of the most dangerous man in the city. "I can't run," she whispered. Something in his cold eyes shifted. If you want to know what happens when mercy becomes the most dangerous weapon of all, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far Lena's story travels. The fluorescent lights of Sal's diner had been flickering for 3 weeks. Management kept saying they'd fix it, but management was one exhausted man who could barely afford to keep the fryers running. So the lights buzzed and stuttered, casting the night shift in unreliable yellow that made everyone look sick. Lena Hayes had stopped noticing. She moved through the graveyard hours with practiced efficiency, her left leg dragging just slightly with each step. A hitch in her gait that regulars had learned not to stare at, and newcomers couldn't help but notice. The leg had been shattered 4 years ago when a drunk driver ran a red light on Madison and 7th. 3 surgeries. 14 pins. A permanent limp and chronic pain that flared whenever the weather changed or she spent too long on her feet, which was every single day. "Table 9 needs ketchup," Marcus called from the grill, his weathered hands flipping burgers with mechanical precision. He'd worked at Sal's for 15 years, and it showed in the tired creases around his eyes. And Sal's locked in the office again. Lena's fingers tightened on the coffee pot she was carrying. How long? Hour and a half this time. That was bad. Locked office door meant phone calls Sal didn't want anyone overhearing. Phone calls that made his hand shake for the rest of the shift. "Did you hear what it's about?" She kept her voice low. Marcus met her eyes, and the look he gave her was heavy with something between pity and dread. "Money. What else?" The dinner rush, if you could call 11 people a rush, had thinned to the usual graveyard stragglers. Old Joe hunched over his coffee at the counter, adding cream and sugar until it was more dessert than caffeine. A trucker named Dale worked through a slice of apple pie in booth 7. And Emma, their newest waitress, wiped down empty tables with the frantic energy of someone who desperately needed every hour on her time card. Emma was 19. She reminded Lena of herself at that age, before the accident, before the medical bills, before she'd learned that the world didn't slow down just because your body broke. "You okay?" Emma appeared at her elbow, young face creased with concern that made her look even younger. "Fine, just tired." "You're always tired." Emma grabbed a dish rag, attacking a water spot that didn't exist. "When was the last time you actually took a day off?" "Can't afford to." "But you're limping worse than usual tonight. Maybe you should sit down for a few—" The front door opened. 3 men walked in, and the temperature in the diner dropped. They wore suits that cost more than Lena made in 6 months. Charcoal wool, midnight blue, cut with the kind of precision that only came from tailors who charged by the stitch. But it wasn't the expensive clothes that made Lena's stomach clench. It was the way they moved, predators in a cage full of prey, scanning for weakness, owning every inch of space they occupied. The one in front was younger than the others, maybe early 30s, with a face that belonged on magazine covers. Sharp cheekbones, cold blue eyes, dark hair swept back with careless perfection. He surveyed Sal's diner the way someone might examine roadkill. "We're here to see Sal." Not a question, not a request. A statement of fact delivered in a voice smooth as expensive whiskey and twice as dangerous. Marcus had frozen at the grill, spatula suspended in midair. Emma had gone pale, the dish rag trembling in her hands. Old Joe suddenly became very interested in his coffee. Lena found her voice. He's in a meeting right now. Can I—" "You can get him." The man's smile was a knife's edge. "Now would be good." "I'll go," Emma whispered, already moving toward the back. "No." Lena caught her wrist, some instinct screaming at her to keep the girl away from these men. "I'll handle it." She limped toward the office, acutely aware of 3 sets of eyes tracking her damaged gait. Every step felt like an announcement of weakness. The office door was thin. She could hear Sal's voice through it, high and desperate. "I understand. I know I'm late, but I need just 1 more week. I swear I can get it. I just need—" Lena knocked softly. Sal? Silence crashed down. Then scrambling sounds. The door cracked open just wide enough for Sal's face to appear. Gray, sweating, a decade older than he'd been that morning. There are men here, Lena said quietly, looking for you. His eyes closed like he'd just received a death sentence. Tell them 5 minutes, please. Sal, what's going on? Just 5 minutes, Lena, please. She returned to the dining room. The three men had spread out like they'd done this before. One blocking the exit, one at the counter, cutting off the path to the kitchen, the leader standing center floor like he owned the building. Emma had retreated behind the register, knuckles white against the laminate counter. He needs 5 minutes, Lena said. He's had 3 months. The leader checked his watch. Rolex, because of course it was. Time's up. Look, I don't know what this is about, but no. He cut her off with surgical precision. You don't. So I'd suggest you go back to pouring coffee and let the adults handle business. Heat flooded Lena's chest. She'd spent 24 years being underestimated, dismissed, talked down to because of her leg, her job, her place in the world. Usually she swallowed it, nodded, moved on. But something about this man, the casual cruelty in his voice, the way he looked at Emma like she was merchandise, ignited something reckless in her blood. This is a diner, she said, voice steady despite the adrenaline making her hands shake. Not whatever kind of place you're used to conducting your business. So either order something or leave. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to stop buzzing. The man turned his head slowly, studying her with the clinical interest of someone examining an insect under glass. What's your name? Lena. Lena. He tasted the word, rolled it around. Do you know who I am? Should I? One of the other men, the one by the door, made a sound that might have been a laugh or a warning. My name, the leader said, each word precisely enunciated, is Victor Kane. The name hit like a physical blow. Even Lena, who avoided the news and kept her head down and built the smallest possible world to live in, knew that name. Victor Kane. The ghost in expensive suits who controlled half the city's underground. The man politicians denied meeting and criminals feared crossing. The reason mothers locked their doors at night and fathers taught their sons to look the other way. She'd just told Victor Kane to order something or leave. I see you've heard of me. Victor's smile was all edges. Good. That saves time. Here's what's going to happen, Lena. Sal is going to come out of that office in the next 60 seconds. He's going to pay me the $50,000 he owes, plus the interest that's been accumulating for 3 months. And then my associates and I are going to leave, and you're all going to go about your evening. Simple, clean, no one gets hurt. $50,000. The number was incomprehensible. Lena had maybe $700 in her savings account after 2 years of scraping together every spare dollar. And if he doesn't have it? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Then things get messy. Victor's tone suggested he was discussing the weather. And nobody wants that. The office door opened. Sal emerged looking like he'd aged 20 years in the last 20 minutes. His shirt was soaked through with sweat. His hands trembled as he gripped the doorframe for support. Mr. Kane. The words came out broken. I know I'm late. I know I should have had it by now. But I just need a little more time. Just 2 more weeks, I swear. You needed 3 months, Sal. I gave you 3 months. The diner's been slow. The equipment keeps breaking. I had to replace the walk-in freezer. The health inspector. Not my problem. Victor's voice never rose. That was somehow worse than shouting. Do you know how many businesses in this city owe me money, Sal? Do you know what would happen if I let every struggling restaurant owner decide when they felt like paying me back? Please. Sal was begging now, and Lena wanted to look away but couldn't. I have money. Not all of it, but I have $30,000 in the safe. That's more than half. If you just give me 2 more weeks for the rest, 2 more weeks turns into 2 more months. 2 months turns into never. Victor's eyes were cold and calculating. You think I'm running a charity? You think I built what I have by being soft? I'll get it. I swear on my life I'll get every penny. Your life. Victor seemed to consider this, tilting his head. Interesting choice of collateral. He moved then, smooth and unhurried, and suddenly there was a gun in his hand. Not pointing at anyone. Just there. Present. Undeniable reality made of steel and menace. Emma made a small, choked sound behind the register. "Here's my counteroffer," Victor said, his voice conversational despite the weapon in his grip. "You give me the 30,000 now, cash. And to make up the shortfall," his gaze swept the diner like a spotlight, landing on Emma and staying there. "I'll take her." Time stopped. "No." The word tore from Lena's throat before her brain could catch up. "No, you can't. She's just a kid. She's an asset." Victor's tone suggested he was discussing a car or a piece of furniture. Young, pretty, clearly desperate for money, or she wouldn't be working in this dump. "I can think of several establishments that would pay very good money for—" Lena moved. She didn't remember making the decision, didn't remember her legs screaming in protest as she lurched forward. She just remembered putting herself between Victor Kane and Emma, arms spread wide like she could possibly shield the girl from a man who controlled an empire built on violence and fear. "Touch her," Lena said, voice shaking with terror and fury and something that felt almost like courage. "And you'll have to go through me first." For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Victor laughed. It was a terrible sound, genuine amusement mixed with something darker, something that suggested he'd seen every play in this game before and knew exactly how it ended. "You?" He holstered the gun with deliberate slowness like he was proving a point. "You're going to stop me?" "If I have to." "Lena, don't." Sal's voice cracked. "Please, just look at you." Victor stepped closer. Lena held her ground even as every instinct screamed at her to run. "You can barely stand, your legs shaking. You're terrified. What exactly do you think you're going to do?" "Whatever it takes." They were close enough now that she could see the faint scar cutting through his left eyebrow, smell the expensive cologne that probably cost more than her monthly rent, see the absolute absence of fear or doubt in his eyes. This was a man who'd never met anyone who could hurt him, never had to. "Brave," he murmured, studying her face. "Incredibly stupid, but brave." His hand moved, fast and professional, grabbing her arm. Not hard enough to bruise, just hard enough to demonstrate the vast gulf in power between them, just hard enough to prove his point. And then he pulled. Lena's damaged leg gave out instantly. It always did when her weight shifted wrong, when the old injury flared hot and angry, when the pins and screws and scar tissue that held her together decided to remind her she was fundamentally broken. She went down hard, hands barely catching herself before her face hit the grimy linoleum. Pain lanced up her spine like lightning. The floor was cold against her palms. She ended up at Victor Kane's feet, looking up at the man who could destroy everything she cared about with a single phone call. "Please." The word came out raw, stripped of everything but desperation. "Please, I can't run, I can't fight, I can't do anything. But don't take her, she's 19 years old. She has a little brother who depends on her. She's trying to save money for community college. Please." Silence stretched out, broken only by the buzzing fluorescent lights and Emma's muffled sobbing behind the register. Victor stared down at her. His expression was unreadable, a mask that revealed nothing. "What happened to your leg?" The question was so unexpected that Lena almost didn't answer. "Car accident, 4 years ago. And you still work on your feet every night?" "I don't have a choice. Everyone has choices." But something in his voice had changed, softened, just barely, just enough to notice. "You could have stayed quiet. Let me take her, saved yourself. But you didn't." "No." "Why not?" "Because she's 19. Lena's voice broke. "Because she reminds me of who I used to be. Because nobody helped me when I needed it, and I won't let that happen to someone else if I can stop it." Victor crouched down, bringing himself to her level. This close, she could see that his eyes weren't actually cold at all. They were careful, controlled. Eyes that had learned to bury everything human so deep that only fragments remained. "What's your name?" he asked again, like the answer mattered more this time. "Lena Hayes." "Lena Hayes." He spoke it like he was committing it to memory. "How long have you worked here?" 3 years. "You have family?" The question hurt more than the fall. "No, just me now." Victor stood abruptly, turned to Sal. "The safe. Open it. Now." Sal scrambled to comply, hands shaking so badly he dropped the cash twice. Bills scattered across the counter, crumpled 50s and hundreds held together with rubber bands. $30,000 in dirty money, probably representing every decent night the diner had seen in the last year. Victor didn't touch it. Instead, he pulled out his phone, typed something quick, and waited. 30 seconds later, the door opened. One of his men entered carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than Sal's car. He set it on the counter, popped the clasps. Inside was more cash than Lena had ever seen in her life. Stacks of $100 bills, crisp and clean and infinite. "Count out 50,000, Victor ordered. "Put it in the safe." Nobody moved. Nobody understood. "I said count it out." Steel entered his voice. "Now." The man obeyed mechanically, pulling out stack after stack and placing them in Sal's ancient safe. The sound of money being counted filled the diner, a sound that should have been satisfying, but instead felt surreal, like watching someone else's dream. When he finished, Victor turned back to Sal. "Your debt is paid. In full. The interest, too." Sal's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. "What?" Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "What is this?" "Consider it a gift." Victor's gaze moved to Lena, still on the floor. From the girl who can't run but stood anyway. Then he walked toward the door. His men followed like shadows, their expensive suits disappearing into the night. The door chimed cheerfully as they left, an absurdly normal sound after what had just happened. The silence they left behind was deafening. Marcus was the first to move. He rushed to Lena, helping her up with gentle hands. "Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" "I'm fine." Her leg disagreed, throbbing with familiar pain. "I'm fine." Sal collapsed into a booth, staring at the open safe like it might disappear if he looked away. "I don't understand. Why would he?" "I don't know." Lena leaned against the counter, trying to process what had just happened. "I don't know." Emma threw her arms around Lena's neck, sobbing into her shoulder. "You saved me. You saved my life. I didn't do anything. You stood up to him. Emma pulled back, tears streaming down her young face. Nobody stands up to Victor Kane. Nobody. But Lena had. And somehow, impossibly, she was still alive. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. Sal kept touching the money like he expected it to vanish. Marcus kept asking if Lena was sure she was okay. Emma couldn't stop crying and thanking her. By the time dawn broke, the whole neighborhood knew what had happened. Customers started showing up just to see the diner Victor Kane had saved, to see the waitress who'd thrown herself in front of a crime boss and lived. Lena cleaned tables and poured coffee and tried to pretend her world hadn't just tilted sideways. She was wiping down the counter when Marcus appeared at her elbow, his expression troubled. "You need to be careful," he said quietly. "What do you mean?" "Men like Victor Kane don't do things for free. There's always a price." He said it was a gift. Nothing's a gift in his world. Marcus glanced at the door like Victor might walk back through it. "Whatever he wants from you, just be careful, please." Lena nodded, but she was already thinking the same thing. Men like Victor Kane didn't show mercy, which meant he wanted something. The question was what? 3 days later, a man in an expensive suit walked into the diner during the lunch rush. He was younger than Victor, maybe 30, with sandy hair and the kind of professional smile that suggested he sold something expensive for a living. He ordered coffee he didn't drink and waited until Lena's section cleared before approaching her. "Miss Hayes, my name is James Carter. I work for Mr. Kane." Of course he did. Lena set down the pot she'd been refilling. "What does he want?" "To offer you an opportunity." James gestured to an empty booth. "May I?" Every instinct told her to say no, to walk away, to pretend this conversation wasn't happening. But her leg was aching from the double shift, and curiosity was a dangerous thing. She sat. James pulled out a business card, heavy stock, embossed lettering, the kind that cost real money just to print. Mr. Kane was impressed by what he witnessed the other night. Your courage, your loyalty to someone you barely knew. He'd like to help you. Help me how? By giving you a chance to walk again, without pain. The words hit like ice water. Lena's hand instinctively went to her damaged leg, hidden under her uniform pants. "That's not possible," she said flatly. "I've seen specialists. The damage is permanent." "You've seen the specialists your insurance would cover. The ones who patch people up just well enough to function. James leaned forward. Mister, Kane has access to the best surgeons in the country. Experimental procedures, physical therapy programs that actually work. He's willing to cover all expenses. Surgery, recovery, medications, everything. Why? The question came out sharp. Why would he do that? Because he can, and because he wants to. Nobody does something like that for free. You're absolutely right. James didn't even blink. In exchange, he'd like your time. Once a week, you'd have dinner with Mr. Kane. Conversation, company, nothing more. Lena stared at him. That's it? Dinner? That's it. I don't believe you. I understand your skepticism. I'd feel the same way. James pulled out another card, this one with a name, address, and phone number. This is Dr. Sarah Chen. She's one of the top orthopedic surgeons in the country. She's expecting you tomorrow at 10 a.m. for a consultation. Go. Hear what she has to say. Get a second opinion on your leg. Then decide. And if I say no to the dinner arrangement, then you say no. Mr. Kane doesn't force anyone into anything they don't want. James stood, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced ease. But consider this, Miss Hayes. You have a chance to change your life, to not be in pain anymore, to walk without limping, without people staring, without spending every night wondering how many more years your leg can take before it gives out completely. All Mr. Kane is asking for is a few hours of your time once a week, conversation with someone who doesn't want anything from him except honesty. He left the cards on the table and walked out. Lena sat there for 20 minutes, staring at them. Dr. Sarah Chen, a chance to walk again, all for the price of having dinner with a crime boss once a week. It was insane, dangerous, probably a trap. But that night, lying in her cramped studio apartment with her leg throbbing despite the painkillers, Lena couldn't stop thinking about it. About walking without pain. About not having to calculate every step, plan every route, ration every hour on her feet. About maybe, possibly, having a normal life again. At 2 a.m., she called the number on the card. A receptionist answered on the second ring, professional, courteous, completely unsurprised to be answering phones in the middle of the night. Dr. Chen's office, how may I help you? My name is Lena Hayes. I was told to call about an appointment. Of course, Miss Hayes. We have you scheduled for 10 a.m. tomorrow. The consultation will take approximately 2 hours. Do you need directions? No, Wait, I haven't confirmed yet. Mr. Kane was quite confident you would call. There was warmth in the receptionist's voice. Shall we see you at 10? Lena should have hung up, should have said no. Yes, she heard herself say. 10 a.m. Excellent. We'll see you then. The line went dead. Lena lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, wondering what she'd just agreed to. Dr. Sarah Chen's office was in a part of the city Lena rarely visited, where buildings gleamed with glass and steel, where people wore designer clothes like armor, where poverty didn't exist because it had been architecturally designed away. The medical center occupied the top 3 floors of a skyscraper, and the waiting room looked like something from a luxury hotel. Lena almost turned around, but the receptionist had already seen her. And then Dr. Chen herself appeared, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, graying hair pulled back in a practical bun, and the air of someone who was very good at what they did. Lena Hayes? She offered her hand. I'm Sarah Chen. Come with me. The examination was thorough. X-rays, MRI, range of motion tests, questions about the accident, the surgeries, the pain levels, the limitations. Doctor. Chen took notes with quick, efficient movements, asking follow-ups that suggested she actually cared about the answers. Finally, she sat back in her chair, tablet in hand, and studied Lena's scans. Your original surgeons did solid work, she said carefully. Given the circumstances and resources they had, they saved your leg and got you ambulatory. That's no small feat. But they stabilized you. They didn't restore you. Doctor. Chen pulled up an image pointing to areas Lena couldn't quite interpret. There's significant scar tissue here. The pins are positioned adequately but not optimally. And this area, she highlighted a section. There's nerve damage that was never properly addressed. Can you fix it? Dr. Chen met her eyes. I think so. It would require 3 surgeries over 18 months, extensive physical therapy between each one. And I won't lie to you, it would be painful. Recovery is hard, but if you're willing to put in the work, she paused. I believe I can get you to about 90% of full function, maybe 95. 90%. Lena had spent 4 years thinking she'd peaked at 50. How much would it cost? Dr. Chen named a figure that made Lena's vision blur. 6 figures. Easily. Maybe 7 by the time everything was factored in. Mr. Kane has agreed to cover all expenses, Dr. Chen continued. Surgery, therapy, medications, follow-up care. You wouldn't pay anything. In exchange for what? That's between you and him. Dr. Chen's expression remained carefully neutral. But I will tell you this. I've worked with Mr. Kane's organization several times over the years. He's helped fund treatments for people who couldn't otherwise afford care. And to my knowledge, he's never asked for anything inappropriate in return. To your knowledge. I'm a mandatory reporter, Lena. If I suspected anything illegal or coercive, I'd be required to report it. I haven't. That should tell you something. Lena left the office with a folder full of information and a head full of questions. She walked for hours, bad leg aching, turning the decision over and over in her mind. 90% function, no more pain, no more limping, no more being the broken thing people pitied, all for the price of having dinner with Victor Kane once a week. It was insane, but so was spending the rest of her life barely functional, working herself into the ground for minimum wage and tips, watching her body slowly give up. That evening, she called James Carter. He answered on the first ring. Miss Hayes. I want to know why, she said without preamble. The real reason, not the polite version. Why me? Silence. Then, I think Mr. Kane should answer that himself. Your first dinner is Friday night. A car will pick you up at 7. I haven't agreed yet. Haven't you? He was right. She had. The moment she'd walked out of Dr. Chen's office with hope flickering in her chest for the first time in 4 years. Fine, she said. Friday, 7. Excellent. One more thing, Miss Hayes. Mr. Kane values honesty above all else. Whatever questions you have, ask them. He'll appreciate your directness. The line went dead. Lena stood in her tiny apartment, phone still pressed to her ear, staring at her reflection in the dark window. She'd just agreed to have dinner with the most dangerous man in the city, and she had absolutely no idea what she was getting herself into. Friday arrived with the weight of inevitability. Lena stood in front of her closet, if the narrow alcove in her studio apartment could be called that, staring at clothes that suddenly seemed inadequate for having dinner with a man who controlled half the city's criminal empire. She owned exactly one dress nice enough for the occasion, simple black, bought for her mother's funeral 3 years ago, worn twice since then for job interviews that hadn't panned out. It would have to do. The car arrived at 7 exactly. Not a minute early, not a minute late. A sleek black sedan with windows tinted so dark she couldn't see inside, driven by a man in his 40s who opened the door without speaking and waited with the patience of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. Lena hesitated on the curb, her damaged leg throbbing from a shift that had run 2 hours long because someone called in sick. Miss Hayes, the driver said quietly. Mr. Kane doesn't like to be kept waiting. She got in. The interior smelled like leather and money, that particular scent of wealth that came from things that cost more than they should. The seats were heated despite the mild evening. Classical music played softly from speakers she couldn't see. It was the kind of car that made her acutely aware of every stain on her dress, every scuff on her shoes, every way she didn't belong. They drove through the city as evening bled into night, leaving behind the familiar streets of her neighborhood for areas she'd only seen in movies, mansions set back from the road, gates that probably cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime, trees planted in careful rows like soldiers guarding the wealthy from having to acknowledge that poverty existed. The restaurant didn't have a sign, just an unmarked door painted glossy black, flanked by topiaries that probably required a full-time gardener. A valet appeared the moment the car stopped, greeting the driver by name. Inside was hushed elegance, low amber lighting, fresh flowers on every table, the kind of quiet that only came from excellent soundproofing and customers who knew how to modulate their voices. A hostess in a dress that probably cost what Lena made in 2 months led her through the main dining room without speaking, her heels clicking on marble floors. They passed tables occupied by people who looked like they belonged in this world. Men in suits that fit like second skins, women dripping in jewelry that caught the light with every movement. Not a single person looked up as Lena passed. She might as well have been invisible. The hostess led her to a private room in the back, separated from the main dining area by a heavy wooden door. She knocked once, opened it, and gestured for Lena to enter. Victor Kane stood when she walked in. He looked different than he had at the diner, less like a predator, more like a man who'd shed his armor for the evening. He'd ditched the suit jacket. His sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, revealing forearms roped with muscle and a tattoo on his left wrist she couldn't quite make out. The gun was presumably still there, hidden somewhere, but for the moment he almost looked normal. Almost. Lena. He gestured to the chair across from him. Thank you for coming. She sat carefully, her leg protesting the movement. Did I have a choice? You always have a choice. He settled back into his own chair with the fluid grace of someone completely comfortable in his own skin. You could have said no, stayed home, ignored my offer. And if I had, then I would have respected your decision. His eyes met hers, and she was struck again by how carefully controlled they were. I'm many things, Lena, but I'm not a liar. When I say something, I mean it. A waiter appeared, silent, efficient, and poured wine into glasses she didn't remember being empty. He disappeared before she could refuse. I don't drink, she said. Then don't. Victor picked up his own glass but didn't drink from it either. But you looked like you needed something to do with your hands. He was right. She was gripping the edge of the table hard enough that her knuckles had gone white. You have questions, Victor said. It wasn't a question. Ask them. Why are you doing this? The debt, the surgery, all of it. What do you actually want from me? I told you. Dinner once a week. Nobody pays hundreds of thousands of dollars for conversation. I do. He set down his glass, leaning forward slightly. Do you know what my life looks like, Lena? Every day, all day, I'm surrounded by people who want something from me. Money, protection, power. They lie to my face and think I don't notice. They smile while planning to betray me. They tell me what they think I want to hear instead of the truth. He paused. And then there's you. What about me? You threw yourself between me and a girl you barely knew. No calculation, no angle, no thinking about what you'd get out of it. You just acted because it was right. His voice softened. Do you have any idea how rare that is in my world? That wasn't bravery, Lena said quietly. That was desperation. Maybe, but it was real. Victor's gaze was intense enough to make her want to look away. And I haven't seen anything real in a very long time. The waiter returned with appetizers, small, artfully arranged things Lena couldn't identify. They looked like paintings on plates. So what? She said, staring at the food. I'm supposed to be your weekly reminder that real people exist? Your dose of authenticity? Something like that. Victor picked up his fork but didn't eat. I spend every day making decisions that affect thousands of people. Decisions that require me to think 10 steps ahead, account for every angle, trust absolutely no one. It's exhausting. And then I meet someone who doesn't think like that, who acts from the heart without calculating the odds. He paused. I find that fascinating. I find you terrifying. Good. His smile was sharp enough to cut. You should be terrified. I am terrifying. But I'm also being honest with you, which is more than most people in your life can probably say. You don't know anything about my life. I know more than you think. Victor finally took a bite of his food. I know you've worked at Sal's for 3 years. I know you send money to your aunt in Pennsylvania every month, even though you can barely afford it. I know you pick up extra shifts whenever Emma needs time off for her brother's doctor appointments. I know you've been in pain every single day for 4 years, and you've never once complained. Lena's blood ran cold. You've been watching me. I've been learning about you. There's a difference. That's not better. Maybe not, but it's honest. He set down his fork. I don't make investments without research, Lena, and make no mistake. This is an investment. In what? In someone who might actually tell me the truth when I ask a question. They ate in silence for a moment. The food was probably exquisite, certainly it cost enough, but Lena barely tasted it. She was too busy trying to understand the man across from her. Victor Kane, who destroyed lives with phone calls and paid for strangers' surgeries. Who controlled an empire built on fear and seemed genuinely interested in conversation with a waitress. It didn't make sense. My turn for a question, Lena said finally. How did you end up like this? Running an empire? Controlling the city? People don't just wake up one day and decide to become crime bosses. Victor was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. My father worked in a factory, 60-hour weeks for 30 years, building parts for cars he'd never be able to afford. When I was 15, the owners decided to move production overseas. Cheaper labor, higher profit margins. My father got 2 weeks severance and a handshake. He swirled his wine but didn't drink. He died 6 months later. Heart attack, stress, and untreated high blood pressure because we couldn't afford insurance. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me something valuable. Victor's voice was flat, emotionless. The world doesn't reward hard work or loyalty. It rewards power. So I decided to acquire power. By hurting people. By protecting my interests and the interests of people under my protection. He met her eyes. You stood between me and Emma. That required putting yourself in danger. Was that wrong? That's not the same thing, isn't it? We both make sacrifices to protect what matters to us. The scale is different. The principle is the same. Lena wanted to argue, but the logic was uncomfortably sound. You're justifying violence. I'm explaining reality. Victor leaned back in his chair. In your world, morality is simple, right and wrong, black and white. In my world, everything is gray. Every decision has consequences. Every choice involves sacrifice. And the people who pretend otherwise are either naive or lying. So you just accept it? The violence, the fear, all of it? I don't accept it. I control it. His voice hardened slightly. Do you know what happens when people like me don't exist? Chaos. Worse people filling the vacuum. At least I have rules. At least people know where they stand with me. Rules like threatening to take a 19-year-old girl? Victor had the grace to look almost embarrassed. That was a negotiation tactic. I wouldn't have actually taken her. How was I supposed to know that? You weren't. That was the point. He sighed, running a hand through his hair in a gesture that made him look unexpectedly human. I needed Sal to understand consequences. But you're right. It was cruel. And unnecessary. Which is why I paid the debt instead. Because I collapsed at your feet. Because you showed me something I'd forgotten existed. Victor's gaze was intense. Courage without calculation. Sacrifice without expectation of reward. It reminded me that not everyone in this city is playing the same game I am. The main course arrived, something with sauce and garnishes that probably had a French name. The waiter refilled water glasses that didn't need refilling and vanished again. Tell me about the accident, Victor said. Lena tensed. Why? Because I want to understand. Because your leg is a part of who you are, and I'm trying to know who you are. She shouldn't tell him. Shouldn't give him anything real. But something about the way he asked, direct, genuinely interested, made the words come anyway. I was 20, working 2 jobs, trying to save money for nursing school. It was 3 in the morning, I was driving home from a shift at a warehouse, and a drunk driver ran a red light on Madison and 7th. She could still see it sometimes when she closed her eyes. I don't remember the impact. I remember waking up in the hospital 3 days later with my mother crying, and a doctor explaining that they'd saved my leg, but I'd probably never walk normally again. And nursing school? Medical bills took everything. My savings, my mother's savings, money we borrowed from family we'll never be able to pay back. Lena stared at her plate. The driver had no insurance. We sued, but he had nothing to take. So I learned to walk with a limp and got a job at a diner, and that's been my life for 4 years. That's not fair. No, it's not. She looked up at him. But you already knew that, didn't you? That life isn't fair. Yes, Victor said quietly. I did. They finished the meal in silence that felt less hostile than before. The waiter brought dessert, something chocolate and decadent, and coffee Lena actually drank because she needed the caffeine for her graveyard shift that started in 3 hours. The surgery is scheduled for 2 weeks from now, Victor said as they were finishing. Dr. Chen will call you with details. Recovery will take 6 to 8 weeks before you can start physical therapy. I can't miss that much work. You won't have to. I've arranged for your shifts to be covered and your wages to be paid. Lena set down her coffee cup carefully. Why would you do that? Because you can't heal if you're working yourself into the ground. He said it like it was obvious. Because the surgery is pointless if you can't recover properly. You're paying for my surgery and my rent and my wages. The enormity of it was starting to sink in. That's a lot of money? Yes. More than I should spend on someone I barely know? Probably. Victor's expression was unreadable. But I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, and you have something I can't buy. So call it a fair trade. What do I have that you can't buy? Authenticity. He said it like he was confessing something. The ability to care about people without calculating what you'll get in return. The courage to do what's right, even when it costs you everything. He paused. I want that in my life once a week, even if it's just for a few hours. They stood to leave. At the door, Victor paused, pulling something from his pocket, a business card with a single phone number. This is my direct line, he said, handing it to her. If you need anything at all, call. Day or night, it doesn't matter. I don't need anything from you. Maybe not now, but if that changes. He left the sentence unfinished. The same car drove her home through streets that looked different now, like she was seeing them from outside her own life. When they pulled up to her building, the driver opened her door with the same silent efficiency as before. Miss Hayes, he said as she was getting out. For what it's worth, Mr. Kane doesn't do this, any of it. You must be someone special. Lena didn't feel special. She felt confused and overwhelmed and like she'd just stepped into a story she didn't know how to navigate. But when she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, she couldn't stop thinking about what Victor had said. About authenticity, about courage, about the way he'd looked at her like she was something rare and valuable instead of broken and ordinary. It was dangerous, letting herself think that way. But it was also intoxicating. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Dr. Chen's office called with pre-surgery instructions. Victor's people arranged everything: time off work, wage replacement, transportation to and from the hospital. Emma cried when Lena told her about the surgery, hugging her so tight it hurt. This is because of what you did, Emma said. Because you saved me. No, Lena replied. This is because a very strange man decided to help me for reasons I don't entirely understand. But that wasn't quite true either. She understood more than she wanted to admit. The Friday before her surgery, she had dinner with Victor again. Same restaurant, same private room, same careful dance of conversation between two people from completely different worlds trying to find common ground. Are you nervous? He asked over wine she still didn't drink. Terrified, Lena admitted. What if it doesn't work? What if I go through all this pain and end up exactly where I started? Then you go through it again and again until it does work. Victor's certainty was absolute. Dr. Chen is the best. If anyone can fix you, she can. And if she can't, then we find someone who can. He said it like money could solve any problem. Maybe in his world it could. Why does this matter so much to you? Lena asked. My leg, my pain, all of it. You barely know me. Victor was quiet for a long moment. Because when you collapsed at my feet and said you couldn't run, I saw something in your eyes. Not fear, not pleading, just truth. And it's been haunting me ever since. That's a strange reason to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm a strange man. His smile was self-deprecating. But I keep my promises, and I promised myself that if you agreed to this, to the dinners, to letting me into your life even a little, I'd make sure you got a chance to walk again. Really walk. Without pain. The surgery happened on a Tuesday morning in a hospital so expensive it didn't feel like a hospital. Private room, nurses who actually had time to check on her, a view of the city from 18 floors up. Dr. Chen visited the night before, walking her through everything that would happen, answering questions until Lena ran out of things to ask. You're going to do great, Dr. Chen said, squeezing her hand. I've done this procedure 47 times. You're in good hands. Lena wanted to believe her. She woke up in recovery with her leg wrapped in bandages and pain medication making the world soft around the edges. A nurse checked her vitals while someone who might have been a doctor asked questions she answered without really hearing. And then Victor was there. She blinked, trying to focus, certain the drugs were making her hallucinate. But no, he was sitting in the chair beside her bed, still in his expensive suit, looking completely out of place in the sterile hospital room. You came, she mumbled through the fog. I said I would. No, you didn't. I implied it. A small smile crossed his face. How do you feel? Like someone took my leg apart and put it back together wrong. That's more or less what happened, But Dr. Chen says it went perfectly. Better than expected, actually. Lena tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Victor stood quickly, adjusting her pillows with surprising gentleness. Easy. You just had major surgery.
Why are you here?
Because you're alone. Because everyone should have someone waiting when they wake up from surgery. He sat back down and Lena noticed for the first time how tired he looked. Because I wanted to make sure you were okay. You have an empire to run. The empire will survive a few hours without me. She wanted to argue, but the pain medication was pulling her back under. Her eyes drifted closed despite her best efforts to stay awake. Rest, Victor said quietly. I'll be here when you wake up. And he was. Every time she surfaced over the next 12 hours, he was there, reading on his phone, making quiet phone calls in the corner, once arguing in terse whispers with someone who might have been James about something that required his immediate attention. But he stayed. By the second day, when her head was clear and the pain was merely excruciating instead of unbearable, Lena finally asked the question that had been building. What do you actually want from me, Victor? He looked up from his phone, meeting her eyes. What do you mean? This. She gestured vaguely at the room, at him, at everything. Nobody does this for dinner conversation. So what do you really want? Victor was quiet for a long moment, his expression more open than she'd ever seen it. I want to remember what it feels like to be human, he said finally. I want to sit across from someone who isn't afraid to tell me the truth, who doesn't want my money or my power or my connections, who just talks to me like I'm a person instead of a monster. He paused. Is that really so hard to believe? Yes, Lena said honestly. Because you are a monster. You hurt people for a living. I know. He didn't look away. But maybe once a week for a few hours, I can pretend I'm not. With you. It should have been manipulative, should have felt like a trap. Instead, it felt like the first completely honest thing he'd ever said to her. Recovery was brutal. Physical therapy was worse. 6 weeks of exercises that made her legs scream, of progress measured in millimeters, of days when she wanted to quit, and days when she couldn't imagine ever walking normally. Victor visited twice a week, once for their scheduled dinner, once just to check on her progress. He never stayed long on the second visit, just long enough to ask how she was doing, to listen to her complain about physical therapy, to remind her that it would be worth it. How do you know? She asked one particularly bad day when the pain had been so intense she'd cried through her entire session. Because I've seen people rebuild themselves from worse, Victor said quietly. Because you're stronger than you think. Because quitting isn't in your nature. You don't know me well enough to say that. I know you stood up to me with a broken leg and no way to defend yourself. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. 12 weeks after surgery, Lena took her first real steps without the crutches. They weren't graceful, they weren't painless, but they were hers. Dr. Chen cried. The physical therapist cheered, and Lena stood in the middle of the therapy room putting weight on her damaged leg and felt something she hadn't felt in 4 years. Hope. That Friday she walked into the restaurant under her own power. Still limping slightly, still favoring her good leg, but walking. No crutches, no cane, just her. Victor stood when she entered, and for a moment she saw something in his face that looked almost like pride. You're walking, he said. I'm walking. She sat down across from him, unable to stop smiling. It still hurts. I'm still not fully healed, but I'm walking. Told you it would be worth it. They ate and talked, and for the first time since this strange arrangement began, Lena felt like she was having dinner with a friend instead of making a deal with the devil. But that feeling wouldn't last. Because while Lena was learning to walk again, Victor's world was starting to fracture, and she was about to become the reason it broke completely. The whispers started small. Lena first noticed them 3 weeks after she'd started walking without assistance. Subtle shifts in how people looked at her when she entered a room, conversations that stopped mid-sentence when she approached, eyes that followed her with a mixture of curiosity and something that looked unsettlingly like fear. At the diner, regulars who'd known her for years suddenly seemed uncomfortable making eye contact. New customers stared openly, then looked away quickly when she caught them. Even Marcus, who'd worked alongside her through 3 years of graveyard shifts, seemed different, cautious, like she'd become someone he needed to be careful around. What's going on? She finally asked him one slow Tuesday night, cornering him by the coffee station. Marcus glanced toward the dining room, then back at her. You really don't know? Know what? He sighed, running a hand over his tired face. People are talking, Lena, about you and Victor Kane. Her stomach dropped. What are they saying? That you're his, that he's keeping you, that the surgery, the dinners, all of it. He couldn't finish the sentence. It's not like that, Lena said sharply. We just have dinner, once a week, that's all. I believe you, but people see what they want to see, and what they see is a waitress who caught the attention of the most dangerous man in the city. Marcus kept his voice low. Some people think you're lucky. Some think you're foolish, and some... He trailed off. Some what? Some think you're a liability. His or yours, I'm not sure. Lena went back to work with ice forming in her chest. She'd been so focused on her recovery, on the miracle of walking again, that she hadn't considered what it looked like from the outside. A struggling waitress suddenly receiving expensive medical care from a crime boss. Weekly dinners at exclusive restaurants. Special treatment that made no logical sense unless there was something more happening, even if there wasn't. The whispers followed her home that night. She could feel eyes on her as she walked to the bus stop, though she never saw anyone watching. Her phone buzzed with a text from a number she didn't recognize. Just 3 words that made her blood run cold. You're being watched. She deleted it immediately, but couldn't stop looking over her shoulder the rest of the way home. Friday's dinner with Victor started normally enough. Same restaurant, same private room, same careful dance of conversation, but Lena couldn't focus. She kept thinking about the whispers, the stares, the text message. You're distracted, Victor observed, setting down his wine glass. What's wrong? People are talking about us. People always talk. They think I'm... She couldn't make herself say it. They think you're sleeping with me. 아시죠? Victor said it calmly, like he was discussing the weather. I know. I've heard the rumors too. And you're not worried? Why would I be? I know the truth. You know the truth. What other people think is irrelevant. It's not irrelevant to me, Lena said, sharper than she intended. I have to live in the real world, Victor, where reputation matters, where people judge you for who you associate with. Then stop associating with me. He said it without emotion, but something flickered in his eyes. You're free to walk away any time. I've told you that from the beginning. I don't want to walk away. I just want... She struggled to find words. I want this to not be so complicated. Everything worth having is complicated. Victor leaned back in his chair. But if the whispers bother you that much, I can make them stop. How? By making it clear that you're under my protection, that anyone who touches you, threatens you, or even speaks badly about you will answer to me personally. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. It's a simple solution. That would make it worse. That would confirm everything people are saying. Then what do you want me to do? Lena didn't have an answer. She wanted the surgery and the weekly dinners and the strange friendship that had developed between them. But she wanted it without the cost, without the danger, without becoming a target just for being associated with him. She wanted the impossible. I got another text today, she said quietly, from a number I didn't recognize. It said, I'm being watched. Victor's entire demeanor changed. The casual ease vanished, replaced by something cold and focused. Show me. I deleted it. When? This afternoon, around 3. He pulled out his phone, typed something quick, then looked back at her with an expression she'd never seen before. Concern mixed with something that looked almost like fear. I'm having James look into it. But Lena, I need you to be honest with me. Have you noticed anyone following you? Cars that seem to appear too often? People who show up in places they shouldn't? I don't know, maybe? I thought I was being paranoid. You're not paranoid, you're being smart. Victor's jaw tightened. This is exactly what I was afraid of. What do you mean? I have enemies, powerful ones, people who would love nothing more than to find a weakness they could exploit. He met her eyes. You're that weakness now. The words hung in the air between them like a death sentence. I didn't ask for this, Lena whispered. I know, which is why I'm going to fix it. Victor stood abruptly. James will take you home. Starting tomorrow, you'll have security. 2 men, rotating shifts, keeping their distance but watching. You won't see them most of the time, but they'll be there. I don't want bodyguards, and I don't want you dead. His voice was flat, final. This isn't a negotiation, Lena. Either you accept the protection or we end this arrangement tonight. Your choice. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she could take care of herself. But the memory of that text message, "You're being watched," was too fresh, too chilling. "Fine," she said, "but just until you figure out who sent the text. Until I'm certain you're safe, which might be longer than you think." The car ride home felt different that night. James drove instead of the usual driver, and his eyes kept flicking to the rearview mirror like he was checking for tails. When they pulled up to her building, he walked her to the door, something he'd never done before. "Mr. Kane is taking this seriously," James said quietly. "So should you. Don't deviate from your routine. Don't go anywhere you don't normally go. And if anything feels wrong, anything at all, you call this number immediately." He handed her a card with a different number than Victor's direct line. "This is emergency response, 24 hours. Someone will answer within 3 rings." "You're scaring me." "Good. Fear keeps you careful. Careful keeps you alive." Lena barely slept that night. Every sound in the hallway made her jump. Every car that passed on the street below felt like a threat. She kept checking her phone, half expecting another message, but nothing came. The security detail appeared the next morning. 2 men in unremarkable clothes, driving an unremarkable sedan, parking half a block from her building. She only spotted them because she was looking. To anyone else, they were invisible. At the diner, Marcus noticed immediately. "You've got shadows," he said, refilling the coffee station. "I know." "Well, that's either very good or very bad. I can't tell which." "Me neither." The first week with security passed without incident. The men kept their distance, professional and silent. Lena almost forgot they were there. Almost. Then Friday came again, and with it, dinner with Victor. He looked worse than she'd ever seen him, exhausted, tense, with shadows under his eyes that suggested he hadn't been sleeping. They ordered food neither of them touched and sat in strained silence until Lena finally broke. "What's happening, Victor? Really happening?" He was quiet for a long moment. "There's been tension in certain circles, people questioning my decisions, my methods. The Sal situation didn't help. Because you showed mercy. Because I showed weakness." He corrected her. "In my world, mercy is weakness. Compassion is vulnerability, and vulnerability gets you killed." "So what does that mean for us?" "It means I have people in my own organization who think I'm going soft, who see you as evidence that I'm losing my edge." Victor's expression was grim. "And I have rivals who see you as leverage, a way to get to me." "Then maybe we should stop. The dinners, all of it. If I'm putting you in danger, you're not putting me in danger." "I am." He leaned forward. "I made the choice to help you, to keep having these dinners, to bring you into my life, even peripherally. That was my decision, my risk. And I'm not going to walk away from it just because it's gotten complicated." "Why not?" "It would be smarter. Because for the first time in 10 years, I look forward to something that isn't business. Because these dinners, talking to you, listening to you, being around someone who doesn't want anything from me except conversation. That's the only time I feel like a person instead of a weapon." He paused. "So no, I'm not walking away, not unless you want me to." Lena should have said yes, should have ended it right there, saved them both from whatever was coming. But she didn't want to. Despite the danger, despite the whispers, despite everything, she'd come to value these dinners too. The way Victor listened like her words mattered. The way he never patronized or pitied her. The way he treated her like an equal even though they existed in completely different worlds. "I don't want you to walk away either," she admitted quietly. Something in Victor's expression softened. "Then we keep going, but carefully. And you follow every security protocol James establishes, no exceptions." "Okay." "I mean it, Lena. These people, they don't play by rules. They won't hesitate to hurt you to get to me." "I understand." But she didn't, not really. Not until 3 days later when everything fell apart. It was a Tuesday night. Lena's shift at the diner was supposed to end at 11, but Emma had called in sick and they were short-staffed, so she stayed until closing. By the time she walked out the back door into the alley where employees parked, it was nearly 1 in the morning. The security detail was supposed to be watching the front entrance. She'd told them she'd be leaving through the back, but she'd forgotten to mention the schedule change. The alley was dark. The backlight had been broken for a week, and maintenance hadn't fixed it yet. Lena's car was parked at the far end, and she was halfway to it when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. 3 men stood between her and the door. They weren't the security detail. They were strangers, hard-faced, cold-eyed, moving with the purposeful coordination of people who'd done this before. "Lena Hayes," the one in front said. Not a question, a confirmation. She ran, or tried to. Her leg, still not fully healed, still weak from months of recovery, gave out after 3 steps. She stumbled, caught herself against a dumpster, kept moving. But they were faster. A hand grabbed her arm. She screamed, twisting, and felt something tear in her newly repaired leg. Pain exploded white-hot and blinding. She went down hard, concrete scraping her palms raw. "Don't make this difficult," the man said, hauling her up by her hair. "We just want to ask you some questions about your boyfriend." "He's not my boyfriend." "Sure he's not." The man's breath smelled like cigarettes and stale beer. Victor Kane spends hundreds of thousands on a crippled waitress out of the goodness of his heart. We're supposed to believe that? "I don't care what you believe." He hit her. Not hard enough to knock her out, but hard enough to make her vision blur and her ears ring. Blood filled her mouth, copper and thick. "Here's how this works," he said conversationally. "You're going to call Kane. Tell him you need to see him. Tonight. Alone. And when he shows up, we're going to have a conversation about territory and respect and what happens when people forget their place." "I won't." He hit her again. This time she tasted broken tooth. "You will. Because the alternative is we hurt you until you do. And trust me, we can make this last a very long time." Lena's phone was in her pocket. The emergency number James had given her burned in her memory, but her hands were pinned behind her back by one of the other men, and struggling only made her damaged leg scream louder. "Okay," she gasped. "Okay, I'll call him." "Smart girl." The man released her hair, letting her slump against the dumpster. "Make it convincing. Tell him you're hurt, you need help, you're scared. He comes alone or you die. Simple." One of the others handed her the phone. Her hand shook so badly she almost dropped it. She pulled up Victor's contact information, her mind racing. There had to be a way out of this, had to be something she could do or say that would warn him without getting herself killed in the process. The phone rang once, twice. Victor answered on the 3rd ring, voice sharp with immediate concern. "Lena, it's 1 a.m. What's wrong?" "I need you," she said, putting every ounce of fear and pain into her voice because it was all real anyway. "I'm hurt. I'm at the diner. Please come." "I'm on my way. Are you safe?" The man was watching her, gun now visible in his hand. "No," Lena whispered. "And Victor? They want you to come alone." She hung up before he could respond. The man smiled. "Good girl. Now we wait." They dragged her deeper into the alley, zip-tied her wrists to a drainage pipe, and positioned themselves in the shadows. Waiting. Hunting. Lena's leg throbbed in rhythm with her heartbeat. Her mouth was full of blood. Her wrists were already going numb from the plastic cutting into them. And she'd just set a trap for the only person who'd shown her kindness in years. 20 minutes passed like 20 hours. Lena tried to work her hands free, but the zip ties were industrial strength, and all she accomplished was cutting her wrists raw. She tried to scream, but one of the men casually pressed a gun to her temple and suggested she stay quiet unless she wanted to die before Victor arrived, so she stayed quiet and waited. The sound of a car pulling into the alley made all 3 men tense. Doors opened, footsteps approached, confident, unhurried. Victor walked into view, and Lena's heart broke. He'd come alone, just like they'd demanded. No backup, no security, just him in his expensive suit, looking calm and controlled and walking straight into an ambush. "Let her go," he said quietly. The lead man laughed. "That's not how this works, Kane. You don't give orders here." "I wasn't asking." Victor's voice dropped to something cold and dangerous. "Let her go, and maybe I don't kill all 3 of you." Big talk for someone outnumbered and outgunned. "You think 3 of you is enough?" Victor's smile was terrifying. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." That's when Lena saw them, shapes moving in the darkness behind Victor. 4, 5, 6 men emerging from shadows like ghosts, all armed, all moving with deadly purpose. The security detail she'd thought was watching the front. James appeared from somewhere, gun already drawn. More men she'd never seen before materialized from impossible angles. The 3 kidnappers realized their mistake too late. "Drop the weapons," James said calmly. "You have 3 seconds." They didn't drop them. What happened next was fast and brutal and nothing like movies. Gunshots cracked in the confined space. Men dropped. Someone screamed. Might have been her, might have been one of them. Blood sprayed across concrete. The man who'd hit her went down with a hole in his chest, eyes wide with surprise. And then it was over. Silence fell like a curtain, broken only by Lena's ragged breathing and the distant sound of sirens that would arrive too late to matter. Victor was at her side in seconds, cutting the zip ties with a knife that appeared from nowhere. "Are you hurt? Did they—" "My leg," she gasped. "I think I tore something when I fell." He picked her up like she weighed nothing, cradling her against his chest. "James, clean this up. I'm taking her to Dr. Chen. The police will find 3 dead criminals who picked the wrong target." Victor's voice was ice. "Make it look like a gang dispute. You know the drill." He carried her to his car, not the sedan she was used to, but something sleek and fast, and drove through the city with controlled precision that somehow felt more dangerous than speeding. Lena pressed her face against his shoulder, shaking, trying not to think about the bodies in the alley, or the blood on her hands, or the fact that men had just died because of her. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I should have called the emergency number. I should have—" "You survived. That's all that matters." His jaw was tight. "This is my fault. I underestimated how far they'd go." "Who were they?" "Competitors. People who think I'm weak, who wanted to prove it by hurting you." His hands tightened on the steering wheel. They were wrong. Dr. Chen was waiting when they arrived at her private clinic, pulled from sleep but somehow completely put together. She examined Lena's leg with gentle efficiency while Victor paced like a caged animal. "Torn ligaments," Dr. Chen said finally. "Not as bad as it could be, but you'll need to stay off it for at least 2 weeks. Physical therapy will need to restart." She met Lena's eyes. "You're very lucky. If you'd put any more weight on it, you could have undone months of healing." "Thank you," Lena managed. Dr. Chen bandaged her wrists, gave her something for the pain, and prescribed rest that they both knew she couldn't afford. Victor drove her home as dawn was breaking. When he pulled up to her building, he didn't let her get out immediately. "This can't continue," he said quietly. "They came after you once. They'll do it again." "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying you need to disappear for a while. I have a safe house outside the city. Secure. Protected. You'd be comfortable there until I can eliminate the threat." "I can't just disappear. I have a job, a life." "You almost died tonight." His voice cracked, just slightly. "They would have killed you, Lena, slowly, painfully, to hurt me, and there would have been nothing I could do to stop it." "Then maybe we should end this. The dinners, the arrangement, all of it. If being connected to you puts me in danger, it's too late for that." Victor finally looked at her, and what she saw in his eyes made her breath catch. "You're already connected to me. Everyone knows it. Ending our arrangement won't make you less of a target. It'll just make you an easier one. So I'm trapped. You're protected. There's a difference." He pulled out his phone, pulled up something, showed her the screen. "This is the safe house. 20 minutes outside the city, fully staffed, secure. You'd have everything you need, and you'd be alive." Lena looked at the house on the screen. Beautiful, isolated, expensive. A cage made of luxury and good intentions. "What if I say no?" "Then I assign you a full security team. 6 men, 24/7 coverage, rotating shifts. They'll follow you everywhere. Work, home, the grocery store. You won't have privacy, but you'll have protection." Both options felt like losing, but losing her freedom was better than losing her life. "The safe house," she said finally. "But just until this is over." "Just until it's over," Victor agreed. He didn't tell her that it might never be over. That once you entered his world, leaving wasn't simple. That targets didn't disappear just because you wanted them to. But Lena was starting to understand that on her own. 3 days later, she moved into the safe house with 2 suitcases and a heart full of dread. The house was everything Victor had promised. Beautiful, comfortable, secure. Staff who appeared and disappeared like ghosts. Grounds that stretched for acres. Security she couldn't see but knew was there. It should have felt safe. Instead, it felt like the walls were closing in. Victor visited every few days, updating her on the investigation, the threat level, the progress toward making her safe again. They had dinner in the safe house dining room instead of restaurants, talked like they always had, pretended this was normal. But it wasn't normal. And Lena was starting to realize that nothing about her life would ever be normal again. 2 weeks in the safe house felt like 2 years. Lena spent her days staring out windows at grounds she couldn't explore without security escorts, reading books she couldn't focus on, and watching her phone like it might suddenly offer an escape route that didn't exist. Her leg was healing again, slowly, painfully, but the psychological damage from the attack ran deeper than torn ligaments. She kept seeing those men's faces, kept feeling the zip ties cutting into her wrists, kept tasting blood and broken tooth. And she kept replaying the moment Victor had walked into that alley, alone, willing to die for her. He visited on the 15th day, arriving just after sunset with takeout from a Thai place she'd mentioned liking once months ago. They ate in the dining room while rain hammered against the windows and thunder rolled across the grounds. "I have news," Victor said, setting down his fork. "We identified who ordered the attack." Lena's stomach clenched. "Who?" "A man named Marcus Volkov. He runs territory on the east side. He's been pushing boundaries for months, testing to see if I'd push back." Victor's expression was carefully neutral. "Taking you was his way of proving I'd gone soft, that I cared more about a waitress than maintaining control. What are you going to do?" "What I have to do, what I should have done months ago." He met her eyes. "I'm going to remove him from the equation, permanently." The word hung between them like a death sentence. Lena knew what it meant, had known from the moment she'd seen Victor's men kill her attackers in the alley. But hearing him say it so calmly, so matter-of-factly, made it real in a way she wasn't prepared for. "You're going to kill him." "I'm going to eliminate a threat to my organization and to you, yes. There has to be another way. Legal action, police involvement. The police can't touch Volkov. He has half the department on his payroll." Victor's voice was patient but firm. "And even if they could, it wouldn't matter. In my world, weakness invites aggression. If I don't respond decisively, every two-bit criminal in the city will think they can come after you to get to me. So more people die because of me. More people die because they made bad choices." He reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "This isn't your fault, Lena. You didn't ask for any of this. You just tried to protect a scared girl in a diner, and that act of courage put you in my path. Everything that happened after, that's on me. But I stayed. I kept having dinners with you. I accepted the surgery, the help, all of it. I made choices too. You made choices to survive, to live, to walk again." Victor's grip tightened. "Don't mistake self-preservation for culpability." They finished eating in heavy silence. Lena wanted to argue, to find some moral high ground to stand on, but she was tired of pretending she didn't understand how Victor's world worked. Actions had consequences. Violence bred violence, and the only way to survive was to be more dangerous than your enemies. "When?" she asked finally. "Tonight. I leave in an hour." "You're going personally?" "I have to. Anything less would be seen as weakness." He stood, began clearing plates with the casual domesticity that always felt jarring coming from a man who killed for a living. "It should be over by morning, and then you can go home." "Just like that?" "Just like that. With Volkov gone, his organization will fracture. His lieutenants will be too busy fighting each other for control to worry about you. You'll be a footnote, yesterday's news." Victor paused at the sink, back to her. "You'll be safe to live your life again." Something in his voice made Lena stand, cross to where he was standing. "What aren't you telling me?" He was quiet for a long moment. "There's something else. Something I found while investigating Volkov's organization." "What?" Victor turned to face her, and the expression on his face was complicated, anger mixed with something that looked almost like pity. "Your brother, Daniel Hayes. He worked for me 5 years ago." The room tilted sideways. "What?" "He was part of a crew that handled collections in the warehouse district. Good worker, reliable. Until he wasn't." Victor's voice was carefully controlled. "He got greedy, started skimming off the top. Small amounts at first, then larger. By the time we caught him, he'd stolen nearly $200,000. Lena's legs went weak. She grabbed the counter for support. "That's not possible. Daniel died in a construction accident 5 years ago. I went to his funeral. Daniel died running from my people. They chased him into a construction site. He fell 4 stories trying to escape." Victor's eyes were steady on hers. "The accident report was modified to spare your family the details. Your mother never knew what he'd really been doing. You killed my brother." The words came out flat, emotionless. Shock had numbed everything. My people were chasing him, but he fell. It wasn't an execution, Lena. It was an accident during pursuit. Victor took a careful step toward her. I didn't know who he was then. Didn't know he had a sister. Didn't make the connection until I started digging into your background. When did you know? 2 weeks ago, after the attack, when I was reviewing everyone who'd ever had contact with my organization, looking for connections to Volkov. 2 weeks. Lena's voice was rising now, shock giving way to fury. You've known for 2 weeks that you're responsible for my brother's death and you didn't tell me? I didn't know how. And I was afraid. He stopped. Afraid of what? Afraid you'd look at me the way you're looking at me right now, like I'm the monster everyone says I am. Lena wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, wanted to hurt him the way she was hurting. Her brother, reckless, charming Daniel, who'd promised to help with their mother's medical bills and then died before he could, had been a criminal, had stolen from Victor Kane, had died running from the consequences. And she'd never known. Did he suffer? The question came out broken. No, it was instant. I made sure to verify. Victor's composure was cracking. I know that doesn't help. I know nothing I say can change what happened. But I need you to understand. I didn't know about you then. If I'd known he had a sister working herself into the ground to survive, I might have handled things differently. Might have? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I can't change the past, Lena. I can only tell you the truth now and hope you don't hate me for it. I should hate you. Lena's voice was shaking. I should walk out of here and never look back. You should, and you can. I'll have James drive you anywhere you want to go. I'll make sure you're protected until Volkov is dealt with, and then you'll never have to see me again. Is that what you want? No. The word was raw, honest. But it's what you deserve, a life that isn't complicated by me, by my world, by the violence that follows me everywhere I go. Lena closed her eyes, trying to process everything. Her brother had been a thief. Victor's people had chased him to his death. And the man who'd saved her life, who'd given her the ability to walk again, who'd become something close to a friend over months of Friday dinners, had been indirectly responsible for the worst loss of her life. It should have been simple. Should have been a clean break. But nothing about this had ever been simple. I need time, she said finally. I need to think. Take all the time you need. Victor moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I am sorry. Not for enforcing consequences. Your brother made choices and paid for them. But for the pain it caused you, for your mother dying not knowing the truth, for the years you spent struggling alone because he wasn't there to help. I'm sorry for all of it. He left before she could respond. Lena stood in the kitchen of the safe house, surrounded by luxury she'd never asked for, and cried for the first time since the attack. For Daniel and his stupid choices. For her mother who'd died believing her son was a hero. For the girl she'd been before the accident, before the medical bills, before Victor Kane walked into her life and turned everything upside down. And for the future she could feel slipping away with every revelation. She didn't sleep that night, just sat in the window seat watching lightning crack across the sky and wondering how many people would die before morning. Victor. Volkov. Men whose names she'd never know, but whose blood would be on her hands anyway, because this war had started the moment she'd thrown herself in front of Emma. Dawn came gray and cold. Lena was still sitting in the window when her phone buzzed with a text from James. It's done. Mr. Kane is safe. Volkov is no longer a threat. No details. No mention of how many people had died. Just clean professional confirmation that Victor had done what he'd said he would do. Eliminated the threat. Lena should have felt relieved, should have felt safe. Instead, she felt hollow. Victor didn't visit the next day, or the day after. James came instead, delivering food and updates and careful inquiries about whether she needed anything. She knew Victor was giving her space, time to process, to decide. On the third day, Emma showed up at the safe house. Lena was so surprised to see her that for a moment she just stood in the doorway staring while the young woman shifted nervously on the front steps. Emma? How did you... Mr. Kane sent a car for me. Said you might want to see a friendly face. Emma's eyes were huge, taking in the mansion behind Lena. This is where you've been staying? It's temporary? Lena stepped aside, let her in. How are you? How's the diner? Weird without you. Marcus keeps asking when you're coming back. Emma followed her to the sitting room, perched on the edge of an expensive sofa like she was afraid she might break it. Are you okay? There were rumors about what happened, people saying you were attacked, that Mr. Kane, that people died. It's complicated. Everything about this is complicated. Emma's voice was soft. But I wanted to say thank you for what you did that night at the diner, and for whatever's happening now. I know it's because of me, because you protected me. This isn't your fault, Emma. Maybe not, but I still feel responsible. The girl twisted her hands together. Mr. Kane came to see me last week. Did you know that? Lena's stomach dropped. What? Why? To make sure I was safe, to offer protection if I needed it, and to tell me that you were the bravest person he'd ever met. Emma met her eyes. He said you changed him, made him remember what it felt like to care about someone other than himself. He said that? He also said he'd never forgive himself if anything happened to you because of him, that he was trying to fix it, but he didn't know if you'd ever trust him again. Emma leaned forward. What happened, Lena? What did he do? So Lena told her about the dinners, the surgery, the attack, about her brother and the terrible coincidence that had connected her to Victor before she'd ever known his name, about the choice she was facing now, walk away and be safe, or stay and accept that loving someone dangerous meant living with constant threat. Loving? Emma picked up on the word Lena hadn't meant to use. You love him? I don't know. Maybe. Lena pressed her hands to her face. How can I love someone who's responsible for so much pain, who kills people as casually as I pour coffee? Who built an empire on fear and violence? But he also saved you, gave you your life back, protected you when he didn't have to. Emma's voice was gentle. People aren't just one thing, Lena. They're complicated, messy, full of contradictions. Maybe Mr. Kane is a monster, but maybe he's also a man trying to be better because of you. That's too much responsibility. Love usually is. Emma stayed for 3 hours, and by the time she left, Lena felt slightly less alone, slightly more capable of making the impossible decision that waited. That evening, Victor finally came back. He looked exhausted, shadows under his eyes, tension in his shoulders, the kind of weariness that came from violence and its aftermath. But his eyes lit up when he saw her, just for a moment, before the careful mask slid back into place. How are you? He asked. I'm not sure yet. Lena gestured to the sitting room. We should talk. They sat across from each other, the coffee table between them feeling like a canyon. Rain was falling again, softer this time, pattering against the windows in rhythm with Lena's heartbeat. I've been thinking about what you told me, she said. About Daniel. And I hate that it happened. I hate that he made those choices. I hate that he died scared and alone. She took a breath. But I don't hate you for it. Victor's expression flickered with surprise. You should. Maybe, but I've spent the last 3 days thinking about who Daniel really was. And the truth is, I didn't know him as well as I thought. He was my big brother, and I loved him, but he made his own choices. Bad ones. And he paid for them. Lena met Victor's eyes. You didn't kill him. Your people were doing their jobs. He ran. He fell. It was a tragedy, but it wasn't murder. That's generous of you. It's honest, which is what you've always asked me to be. She leaned forward. But I need to know something, and I need you to be completely honest. No games, no manipulation, just the truth. Anything. Did you know about Daniel when you first helped me? When you paid off Sal's debt and offered the surgery? Was any of this guilt-driven compensation for what happened to my brother? Victor held her gaze, unflinching. No. I didn't know until 2 weeks ago. Everything I did for you, the debt, the surgery, the dinners, I did because I wanted to. Because you impressed me. Because, for the first time in years, I met someone who acted from courage instead of calculation. He paused. Learning about Daniel changed nothing except making me realize how deeply our lives were already connected. Fate or coincidence, I don't know. But it wasn't guilt. Okay? Lena believed him. She didn't know why, but she did. Second question. What happens now? Volkov is gone. The threat is eliminated. So what comes next? That depends on you. Victor's voice was careful. You can go back to your life. I'll make sure you're protected from a distance. We can end the Friday dinners and the arrangement. You'll be safe and free. Or, or you stay in my life, fully. Not as an obligation or a weekly dinner companion, but as someone who matters to me. Someone I want to protect not because I have to, but because I can't imagine not doing it. He stood, crossed to the window, stared out at the rain. I know what that means. The danger, the complications, the fact that being connected to me will always make you a target. I know it's not fair to ask, but I'm asking anyway. Lena's heart was pounding. Why? Victor turned to face her, and for the first time since she'd known him, his mask was completely gone. What she saw underneath was raw and honest and almost painful to witness. Because somewhere between the diner and the surgeries and the Friday dinners, I fell in love with you. And I have no idea what to do about it. The words hung in the air between them like a confession. Lena stood slowly, her healing leg protesting but holding. She crossed to where Victor stood, close enough to see the vulnerability in his eyes, the fear that she'd reject him. I don't know if I love you, she said quietly. I think I might, but I'm also terrified of what that means, of what my life becomes if I choose you. Then don't choose me. Choose yourself. Choose safety and simplicity in a normal life. I don't think normal was ever an option for me. Lena reached up, touched his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. From the moment I collapsed at your feet, everything changed. I can't go back to who I was. That person doesn't exist anymore. So who are you now? I'm still figuring that out. She let her hand drop. But I know I'm not ready to walk away. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Victor pulled her into his arms then, holding her like she was something precious and breakable. Lena let herself lean into him, let herself feel safe for the first time since the attack. Let herself imagine what it might be like to choose this impossible, dangerous man and build something real from the wreckage. I can't promise you safety, he said against her hair. I can't promise you normal, but I can promise you honesty, loyalty, protection for as long as I'm breathing. And love? The word felt fragile in her mouth. And love. More than I thought I was still capable of feeling. They stood there in the fading light, while rain washed the world clean outside, two people from different worlds trying to build a bridge between them. Lena knew there would be more threats, more violence, more impossible choices. But for the first time since this started, she felt like she was making decisions instead of just surviving them. Take me home, she said finally. Not to my apartment, not to the safe house, to wherever you actually live. I want to see your real life, not the version you show the world. Victor pulled back to look at her. Are you sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. He smiled then, genuine, unguarded, and Lena saw the man he might have been if the world had been kinder. The man he could still become if given reason enough to try. They left the safe house that night, driving through the city as it came alive with evening lights. Victor lived in a penthouse downtown, not ostentatious but comfortable, decorated with surprising taste. Books lined shelves, art hung on walls. A telescope stood by the window, pointing toward stars she couldn't see through the city light pollution. It was the home of someone who'd built wealth but remained fundamentally alone. I don't bring people here, Victor said, watching her take it all in. This is private, separate from business. Then why bring me? Because you asked. Because I want you to see me. Really see me. Not the crime boss or the monster or the man in expensive suits making threats. He crossed to her, took her hands. Just Victor. The person I am when nobody's watching. Lena looked around the penthouse again, seeing it differently. The books were philosophy and history. The art was modern but thoughtful. The telescope suggested someone who looked up even when surrounded by darkness. I see you, she said softly. And you're not what I expected. Better or worse? More human, which is somehow more complicated. They talked late into the night, about Daniel and the past, about the future and its uncertainties, about the impossible situation they'd found themselves in. Victor told her about the business he was trying to make more legitimate, the violence he was trying to reduce, the legacy he didn't want to leave. I've spent 10 years building an empire, he said, and I'm starting to realize empires are just kingdoms built on graves. I don't want that anymore. I want something real. Like what? Like this. Sitting with someone who challenges me, who sees my worst parts and doesn't run, who makes me want to be better than I am. He touched her face gently. Like you. Lena fell asleep on his couch, exhausted by emotion and revelation. When she woke, Victor was asleep in the chair across from her, tablet fallen sideways in his lap, still dressed because he'd been too tired to move. She watched him in the early morning light, this dangerous, complicated man who'd somehow become essential to her life, and wondered what came next. The answer came 3 days later when James arrived at the penthouse with news that changed everything. "We have a problem," he said, not bothering with pleasantries. "One of Volkov's lieutenants survived. He's been talking, making accusations, saying you went after his boss because of a personal vendetta over a woman." James glanced at Lena. "Word is spreading. People are questioning your judgment, saying you've compromised your position over a relationship." "Let them talk," Victor said dismissively. "It's not just talk. 3 of our largest partners are requesting meetings. They want reassurance that you're still focused on business, that you haven't gone soft." The word hung between them like an accusation. Victor's expression hardened. "Tell them I'll meet. Tomorrow. All 3 at once. And I'll make it very clear that my personal life doesn't affect my business decisions. And Miss Hayes stays with me, under protection, non-negotiable." James left, and Lena felt the walls closing in again. The brief respite was over. Reality was reasserting itself with sharp teeth and clear stakes. "This is what I meant," Victor said quietly. "About the cost. About what being with me means." "I know." Lena stood, crossed to him. "But I'm not running, not anymore." "You should be terrified." "I am, but I'm also done letting fear make my decisions." She kissed him then, the first time she'd been the one to initiate contact. It was soft and careful, and full of all the things neither of them knew how to say. When they broke apart, Victor was looking at her like she'd just performed a miracle. "I love you," she said, the words coming easier the second time. "I don't know if it's smart or safe or even sane, but I love you, and I choose you, whatever that means." Victor's response was to pull her close and hold on like she was the only thing keeping him anchored to humanity. And maybe she was. The meeting was set for a warehouse on the industrial edge of the city, neutral territory that belonged to none of the parties involved. Victor spent the morning preparing, making phone calls in clipped, controlled tones, while Lena watched from the penthouse window and tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. "You don't have to come," Victor said for the 3rd time, adjusting his cufflinks with precise movements. "It might be safer if you stayed here." "We've already established that nowhere is safe." Lena turned from the window. "And if this meeting is about me, about whether you've been compromised by our relationship, then I should be there. Let them see who I am instead of whatever story they've created. They'll use you against me, try to make you look like a weakness. Then prove I'm not." She crossed to him, straightened his tie even though it didn't need straightening. "You said you wanted something real in your life. This is real. Fighting for it is real. Show them that choosing me wasn't weakness. It was the strongest thing you've ever done." Victor caught her hands, held them against his chest where she could feel his heartbeat. "You're either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish." "Maybe both." She managed to smile. "I learned from the best." They arrived at the warehouse an hour before the meeting. James and 6 other men swept the building first, checking for threats, establishing perimeter security. By the time the first partner arrived, Victor was standing in the center of the empty space with Lena at his side, presenting a united front that was both declaration and challenge. The 3 partners arrived within minutes of each other, powerful men who controlled different sectors of the city's underground economy. Dmitry Kozlov ran the port operations. Raymond Torres handled the gambling and entertainment districts. And Chen Wei controlled the financial networks that moved money through legitimate and illegitimate channels with equal ease. They entered with their own security, eyeing each other with the careful suspicion of predators forced to share territory, but their attention quickly focused on Victor and on Lena. "So," Kozlov said in heavily accented English, his eyes cold and assessing, "this is the woman who started a war." "This is Lena Hayes," Victor corrected, his voice carrying steel beneath the courtesy. "And she didn't start anything. Volkov made the decision to attack someone under my protection. I responded appropriately." "Appropriately?" Torres laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You wiped out his entire operation over a waitress. That's not business, Kane. That's emotion, and emotion makes men sloppy. Emotion makes men human. Victor's tone didn't change. But let me be clear, my decision to eliminate Volkov had nothing to do with emotion. He violated the most fundamental rule of our world. He came after mine. If I'd let that stand, every two-bit gangster in the city would think they could take shots at my people without consequences. Your people. Chenwei spoke for the first time, his voice soft and precise. Is Miss Hayes one of your people? Or is she something else? Because the rumors suggest she's become something of a liability. Lena felt Victor tense beside her, but she spoke before he could. I'm standing right here. If you have questions about who I am or what I mean to Victor, you could ask me directly instead of talking around me like I'm furniture. All three men turned their full attention to her. The weight of their gazes was almost physical. Predators evaluating prey, calculating threat levels, deciding whether she was worth the trouble. Bold, Kozlov observed. I like bold. But bold doesn't answer the question. What are you to Kane? A distraction, a conscience, a weakness waiting to be exploited? I'm someone who reminds him why he built this empire in the first place. Lena kept her voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through her. Not for power, not for money, but for control. For the ability to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. Victor showed me mercy when he didn't have to. He helped me when there was no profit in it. And those choices, those human choices, don't make him weak. They make him different from men like Volkov, who only understand violence. Pretty speech, Torres said, but mercy doesn't build empires. Fear does, respect does. And right now, people are starting to wonder if Kane still commands either. Then those people are fools. Victor's voice cut through the warehouse like a blade. I've held this city together for 10 years. I've managed territories, settled disputes, and maintained order when chaos would have been easier. And I did it without becoming the kind of monster who attacks innocent people to prove a point. Volkov crossed a line. I erased him for it. That's not weakness. That's exactly the kind of strength that keeps this city from tearing itself apart. But you did it for her, Chenwei said quietly, gesturing to Lena. That's the problem. You made a business decision based on personal feelings. How do we know you won't do it again? How do we trust that your judgment isn't compromised? Because my judgment has never been better. Victor's voice was absolute. For 10 years, I've made every decision from a place of cold calculation. No attachments, no emotions, just logic and profit and survival. And you know what that got me? An empire built on fear. Partners who only stay loyal because they're afraid not to. A life where I trust no one and nothing matters except the next deal, the next threat, the next move on the board. He paused, and when he continued, something in his tone had shifted. Less calculated, more raw. Lena changed that. She reminded me that there's more to life than power. That sometimes the right choice isn't the profitable one. That protecting someone who matters is worth more than maintaining an image of invincibility. Victor looked at each of them in turn. So yes, I eliminated Volkov because he came after her. And I'd do it again. Not because I'm weak, but because I finally understand what's worth fighting for. If that's a problem for any of you, say it now. We'll settle it here, and whoever walks out of this warehouse will know exactly where everyone stands. The silence that followed was profound and dangerous. Lena could feel violence hovering in the air like a held breath, waiting to see which way the room would tip. Chenwei was the first to move. He stepped forward, studying Victor with sharp, intelligent eyes. You've changed, Kane. That much is obvious. The question is whether you've changed for better or worse. Better, Victor said without hesitation. Ask anyone who works for me. Ask whether I'm more fair now, more measured, more willing to find solutions that don't involve bloodshed. I haven't gone soft. I've gotten strategic. There's a difference. Show us, Torres challenged. Prove that this isn't just about the girl. Prove you can still make hard choices. What did you have in mind? Torres pulled out a tablet, brought up a file, and showed it to Victor. Lena couldn't see the screen, but she saw Victor's expression harden as he read. This is Marcus Chen's operation, Victor said flatly. Your nephew. Chenwei nodded. Who has been skimming profits and selling information to our competitors. By your own rules, he should be eliminated. But he's family. So I'm asking, what would you do? It was a test, a trap. If Victor showed mercy, they'd call it weakness. If he demanded blood, they'd question whether he'd lost his humanity. There was no good answer. Victor studied the tablet for a long moment, then looked up at Chenwei. What do you want to do? The question seemed to catch Chen Wei off guard. What? He's your nephew, your family. I'm asking what outcome you want. Because if this were purely business, I'd tell you to cut your losses and eliminate the threat. But we both know it's more complicated than that. So what do you actually want? Chen Wei was silent, clearly weighing his response. Finally, he said, I want him to stop, to learn, to be better. But I don't know if that's possible. Then let's find out. Victor handed back the tablet. Give him a choice. He can leave the city, start over somewhere else with enough money to build a legitimate life, or he can try to fix what he's broken, prove he's trustworthy, earn back his place. But make it clear, one more betrayal and there's no third chance. That's business. But giving him the option to choose redemption, that's family. And it doesn't make you weak to value both. Kozlov laughed, a real laugh this time. You've definitely changed, Kane. The old you would have demanded his head on principle. The old me built an empire on graves. Victor's voice was quiet. I'm trying to build something different now. Something that lasts. And empires that last are built on more than fear. They're built on loyalty, respect, the understanding that everyone makes mistakes and some people deserve a chance to fix them. And if your mercy is mistaken for weakness, Torres pressed, if other people see this as an opening, then I'll remind them exactly how dangerous mercy can be when it comes from someone who doesn't have to offer it. Victor's smile was sharp. I'm not soft. I'm strategic. There's a difference, and anyone who forgets that will learn it the hard way. The three partners exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them that Lena couldn't read. Finally, Chen Wei extended his hand. I can work with strategic, he said. Welcome back, Kane. The real version this time. Kozlov and Torres followed suit, and Lena felt the tension in the room shift from confrontation to something closer to accord. It wasn't friendship, it wasn't even trust, but it was understanding, recognition that Victor had changed but remained formidable. One more thing, Torres said as they were preparing to leave. The girl stays with you? She does, Victor confirmed. Then make sure she's protected, because word about this meeting will spread, and there will be others who see her as your weak point. They'll test it. Let them try, Victor said softly. They'll learn the same lesson Volkov did. The partners left with their security details, and suddenly the warehouse felt cavernous and empty. Lena let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. That was terrifying, she said. Abu, that was necessary. Victor pulled her close, and she could feel the tension finally draining from his body. And you were perfect. Everything I said about you making me better, I meant it. I know. She leaned into him. So what happens now? Now we live our lives, carefully, but together. The next weeks were strange and careful as Lena and Victor learned to navigate a relationship that existed half in shadows and half in light. She moved into the penthouse officially, keeping her apartment as a backup but spending most nights with Victor. She went back to work at the diner despite his protests, needing the normalcy even if customers now whispered and stared. Emma was the first to say what everyone was thinking. You look different, she said one night during a slow shift. Happier, scared but happier. Is that possible? Being both at once? I think it's the only way to be happy when you love someone dangerous. Emma refilled the coffee station with practiced efficiency. Are you scared he'll hurt you? No. I'm scared someone else will hurt me to hurt him, or hurt him to hurt me, or that this will all fall apart because it's too impossible to sustain. But you're staying anyway. I'm staying anyway. Lena smiled despite herself. Because somehow, impossibly, he's worth it. Victor was slowly transforming his business, moving operations toward legitimate enterprises, reducing the violence, building something that could eventually operate entirely above board. It was slow work, dangerous work. Every change created new vulnerabilities, new opportunities for rivals to strike. But he was committed. I'm building this for you, he told her one night as they sat on the penthouse balcony watching the city lights. For us, so that eventually maybe you won't have to be afraid anymore. I'll always be a little afraid, Lena said honestly, but that's okay. Fear means I understand the stakes. It means I'm not taking any of this for granted. 3 months after the warehouse meeting, Victor called Lena into his office, the real one, in the building downtown where he conducted legitimate business. She'd never been there before, and walking through doors marked with his name on frosted glass felt surreal. I have something to show you, he said, pulling up documents on his computer. I've been working on this since the attack, since I realized how vulnerable we both are. What is it? A foundation, funded by my legitimate businesses. It provides medical care and support to people who can't afford it otherwise. People like you were. People my brother was before he made bad choices. Victor turned the screen so she could read. I want you to run it. Lena stared at the documents, bylaws, funding structures, mission statements. It was real, substantial, a way to turn Victor's blood money into something that actually helped people. Why me? Because you understand what it's like to be invisible, to need help and not know where to find it, to make impossible choices because the system failed you. Victor took her hands. Because you have more courage and compassion in your broken leg than most people have in their entire bodies. And because I want to build something good with you, something that matters beyond profit and power. This would change everything. I know. You'd have to quit the diner, spend your time running the foundation instead of pouring coffee. It would put you more firmly in my world, make you more visible as someone connected to me. He paused. But it would also give you purpose, agency, a way to help people the way I helped you. Lena read through the documents more carefully. The foundation was real, properly structured, genuinely funded, designed to make actual differences in people's lives. It was everything she dreamed of doing before the accident destroyed those dreams. Yes, she said. I'll do it. Victor's smile was brilliant and unguarded. I was hoping you'd say that. The foundation launched 6 months later with Lena as its director. The first person they helped was a single mother whose son needed surgery she couldn't afford. A surgery that would let him walk without pain, play without limitations, live without being defined by his disability. Lena cried when she signed the approval paperwork. This is what it feels like, Victor said, watching her. Using power for good instead of control. I'd forgotten. So remember, Lena said, every time you have to make a hard choice, every time the business gets dark, remember this. Remember that you're capable of more than violence. He kissed her then in the foundation's small office, surrounded by case files of people who needed help. And Lena felt something shift, the final piece of accepting who they were together. Not perfect, not safe, but real, and trying. A year after that night in the diner when Lena had collapsed at Victor's feet, they stood together at the foundation's anniversary celebration. The event was small. Staff, volunteers, some of the people they'd helped. Emma was there with her brother, healthy now thanks to treatment the foundation had funded. Marcus from the diner had brought his wife. Even Dr. Chen had come, smiling at Lena with quiet pride. You've changed a lot of lives, Dr. Chen said, including your own. Victor changed mine first, Lena replied. I'm just trying to pay it forward. You're doing more than that. You're building something that will outlast all of us. Dr. Chen glanced at Victor across the room. And you've changed him too. In all the years I've known him, I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. How does he look at me? Like you're the answer to a question he'd stopped asking. Like you're home. Later that night, back at the penthouse, Victor pulled Lena onto the balcony where they'd had so many conversations over the past year. The city sprawled below them, lights and shadows and millions of stories playing out in the dark. I have something for you, he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Lena's heart jumped. Victor, it's not what you think. Or maybe it is, but not yet. He opened the box to reveal a key, simple, silver, clearly significant. This is to a house, outside the city, far enough away that we could disappear if we needed to, close enough that we could get there in an emergency. I bought it 6 months ago, and I've been setting it up as a true safe haven. Somewhere we could start over if everything here fell apart. Why are you giving this to me now? Because I want you to know you always have a choice. You can stay in this life with me, the foundation, the careful balance, the constant awareness of danger. Or if it ever becomes too much, you can use that key. Start fresh somewhere else. I'll make sure you're safe, make sure you have everything you need, and I won't follow unless you ask me to. Lena took the key, feeling its weight in her palm. You'd really let me go? I'd really let you choose, every day. That's what love is, giving someone the freedom to leave and hoping they stay anyway. She closed her fingers around the key, then pulled Victor into a kiss that was soft and deep and full of everything she'd learned about love over the past year. That it was complicated and dangerous and required more courage than she'd known she possessed. That it meant choosing someone every day despite knowing all the ways it could hurt. That sometimes the bravest thing you could do was stand still instead of running. "I'm not going anywhere," she said against his lips. "Not today. Not tomorrow. Not until one of us decides this isn't worth fighting for anymore. And if that day never comes, then I guess we're stuck with each other?" She smiled. Forever sounds terrifying and perfect in equal measure. "It does, doesn't it?" Victor rested his forehead against hers. "I never thought I'd get this. Someone who knows exactly who I am, monster and man, and chooses me anyway. Someone who makes me want to be better without demanding I become someone else. I never thought I'd get to walk again, let alone walk beside someone who sees me as strong instead of broken." Lena stepped back slightly, testing her leg the way she still did sometimes, confirming it would hold. "We're both full of surprises." They stood there as night deepened around them, two people from impossible circumstances who'd found something real in the wreckage. The foundation would continue its work. Victor's businesses would keep evolving toward legitimacy. Threats would come and go. Life would remain complicated and dangerous and unpredictable, but they'd face it together. A year later, when Victor proposed properly, with a ring and words that made Lena cry, she said yes without hesitation. They married in a small ceremony with only people they truly trusted present. Emma was Lena's maid of honor. James stood as Victor's best man. And when they exchanged vows, promising to choose each other through whatever came next, Lena realized she'd been wrong about something fundamental. She'd thought her story ended the night she collapsed in that diner, thought her life would be small and painful and limited forever. But that hadn't been an ending. It had been a beginning. The beginning of learning she was stronger than her broken pieces. The beginning of understanding that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. The beginning of finding love in the last place she'd expected, with a man who'd built an empire on violence and was learning to build a legacy on something better. 5 years after their wedding, Lena stood in the foundation's new building, a full facility now, with surgical suites and physical therapy equipment and staff who shared her vision of helping people the system had failed. She was watching a teenage girl take her first steps after reconstructive surgery, supported by therapists who cheered every shaky movement forward. Victor appeared at her side, slipping his hand into hers. "Remind you of anyone?" "Every single day." Lena squeezed his hand. "That girl who couldn't run? She's running the show now." "Metaphorically." "Metaphorically," she grinned. "Though my leg's pretty good these days. Dr. Chen says I'm at 94% function, which is close enough to perfect for me." "You were always perfect." Victor pulled her close. "Broken leg and all." "Liar." "Honest. There's a difference." He kissed her temple. "Ready to go home?" "Always." They walked out of the foundation together, Lena's gait smooth and confident now, Victor's hand steady on her back. The city stretched around them, still dangerous, still complicated, still full of shadows that sometimes threatened to swallow the light. But they'd learned to navigate those shadows together. And as they drove toward the penthouse, toward home, toward the life they'd built from impossible choices and unlikely mercy, Lena thought about that night in the diner, about collapsing at Victor's feet and whispering those 3 words that changed everything. "I can't run." She'd been wrong. She could run, could walk, could stand on her own 2 feet and face whatever came next with strength she'd had to fight to reclaim. But the beautiful thing, the miraculous thing, was that she didn't have to anymore, because she'd found someone who would stand with her instead, someone who'd shown her that mercy could be the most dangerous weapon of all, not because it was weak, but because it had the power to transform monsters into men and broken girls into warriors. Someone who'd chosen love over power and found it was the bravest thing he'd ever done. And together, they were building something neither of them could have imagined that night when everything fell apart. They were building a life worth living, a love worth fighting for, and a future that proved sometimes the most impossible stories have the most beautiful endings. Not because they're easy, but because they're earned, one brave choice at a time.